a lot of very successful salespeople are the quieter types.
Okay.
They tend to be a little bit more introverted.
I have this sort of image of sort of the greased back hair, kind of trying to pull a bit of a fast one, trying to sell me something I don't really like.
The single most important factor in success for a salesperson is discipline.
Hello and welcome to the VFM Podcast. I'm here with Ian FairBairn, Senior Consultant at VFM, and today we are going to be discussing sales. So Ian, sales is a big thing for VFM. I think you said to me once that essential selling skills is a core course that we offer. So there's a lot we can talk about, but let's just a brief sort of introduction to sales and sort of our understanding around that. I think the first question I would have is, as a non-salesperson, is that when you think of a salesperson, I have this sort of image of sort of the greased back hair, kind of trying to pull a bit of a fast one, trying to sell me something I don't really like. Is that a fair image? And how can we sort of look at, let's say, a good versus a bad salesperson?
Okay, right. There's a lot in that question there, Adam. So let's take your last point first. Really, to talk about good or bad salespeople is not very helpful. The judgmental approach doesn't add a lot to it. It's better if we describe the behaviours of an effective salesperson. I think that's a good starting point. So my experience is that the best salespeople aren't necessarily the most enthusiastic, the most motivated. That is not what I've found over the years. I would say the single most important factor in success for a salesperson is discipline. Being disciplined in their whole approach to life and to the role. So being disciplined with their time management, being disciplined with their customer management, being disciplined with their price management, so that they make sure that they are visiting or calling on the right customers at the right time in a planned way. They've got something to talk about. They've probably got an agenda because they're organised, they're disciplined. They know exactly where they're going to go in a negotiation. And so they are disciplined in everything they do, the number of prospects they would see, the number of existing customers they would see, how they've split that by the different product categories or service categories that they're selling. So I think discipline is for me, the most important thing I've seen over the years. So if you wanted to see an ineffective salesperson, they're the ones without that discipline. So when it comes to time management, they're here, there, and everywhere. They don't know the number of prospects that they're seeing as a percentage of total. They would really have to think about the margins that they're actually making, that they're responding to fires rather than actually planning it. So they're being pulled along. They've got a tiger by the tail maybe, and the tiger is sending them everywhere instead of being disciplined enough to be in charge of what they're doing. In terms of your second, or your first point really, about the greaseback type of, I don't recognise that at all. Okay. I think that's a caricature that's been put forward. It's funny. It's probably got its place in a lot of folklore. Particularly, I'd say in Britain, for example, the Arthur Daly type, the Del Boy type, which are funny, but they don't really have anything to do with professional selling. Particularly, I'd say in industries where you need repeat business, they have no place whatsoever, because what you need is you need to make sure that the customer wants to come back. And I'd say in capital goods, particularly, agricultural, heavy trucks, construction equipment, you really do need the customer to keep coming back. So it's not about trying to get a deal at any cost. What it's about is making the customer more successful, so the customer wants to come back to us. That's what I would say.
Okay, you mentioned customer success there. That's a sort of kind of win-win scenario. So what's the win for the customer and what's the win for the salesperson?
So the win for the salesperson is they get the deal, they get that income stream, and they get the repeat business because it's easier to get repeat business is to get a one-off. So the win is that really you'll find that to meet sales targets, it'll be much quicker if you've got that repeat business. For the customer, the win is, as I said, it's about success. So we used to talk in terms of customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction, however, is a very subjective view. Are you happy? Yes, I am. Well, what does that really tell me? Are you, how happy are you? Would you recommend us to someone else? Well, yes, I might. Those are subjective things, whereas customer success is much more objective. You can quantify it. So customer success would be around things like, can we improve the customer's image with their customers? Can we reduce their staff turnover? Can we make them more money? Can we reduce their cost of ownership? All of those things are things that we can actually measure quite strongly. So it could be something like fuel consumption or energy consumption. I can measure it. Staff turnover, I can measure it. Uptime and productivity, I can measure them. So what's in it for the customer is this idea of customer success, which makes their business look better, feel better, perform better, ultimately make more money. That's what we're trying to do. So the salesperson of today is not about buy this. Yeah. It's about talking with the customer to find the possibilities that will make that customer more successful, and then delivering on those. And once you do that, then the customer loyalty increases dramatically.
Okay, thank you. Now, slightly differently, for someone who is maybe not a professional salesperson or is a bit wary of sales, maybe let's say people who feel that maybe they're more introverted, a bit shy, how would you sort of recommend they can go about, where they want to sell something, but they maybe feel slightly awkward about it, or they feel like they're being duplicitous if they're trying to speak to a potential customer? How can they sort of what can they do about that?
I think the most obvious thing to do is to see selling not in terms of that duplicitous type of I want this deal, but to see selling as a process. Okay. A process that you would go through in very distinct steps. You know what the next step will be and you take that step. And within that overall sales process, we've then got other processes we can break down. So if you were introverted and shy, for example, prospecting a new customer can be difficult for you. So what we would do there is to say, well, actually, there is a prospecting process. Okay. And this is where it starts and this is where it finishes. And it's actually quite a simple process. It's quite a short process. And you can make things easier within that process. So, for example, you might want to look at lead generation, or if you have some sort of CRM system, opportunity management. So you have a reason for being in front of the customer. I think that would be the first thing. And you can take that whole idea right the way through the big sales process. So if for example, if you're worried about, say, gaining commitment from a customer, asking for the order, then really that's actually quite a small process. There's only three or four steps in that process. If you're worried about the negotiation and the price handling, it's about having that process in place. This is what I'm aiming for. This is my fallback position. And always remember that when a customer says no, they're not saying no to you. They're not rejecting you. What they're saying is, I don't have enough information to actually go ahead with what you're proposing. And the research says in about 3/4 of cases, it is that lack of information. We haven't put that information across. And if you're not a salesperson, maybe you're more technical or whatever, then you can feel that, well, of course I've got, the better mousetrap than everyone else. But just having the better mousetrap isn't enough. You've got to be able to prove that, show that. So the use of I would say, particularly for people who are shy or modest, don't feel you have to say it. Go and get yourself some testimonials. Because other people could say things about you in a way that you've never say for yourself. So there are many different things you can do, but I must say that a lot of very successful salespeople are the quieter types.
Okay.
They tend to be a little bit more introverted, a little bit more reflective, and customers can see that.
Yes.
The yes but type of salesman, it's all very well, but they're always on the back foot.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're always on the back foot.
Okay. I suppose it goes back, talking about process, to the discipline. And if you break it down, you've got your discipline, then that's how you go about it.
That's what I believe.
Yeah. We're running out of time, but I just, if someone wanted to sort of improve how they go about sales, or to sort of increase their sales, what would you recommend? What some practical steps that sort of could be taken to help someone or a business?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, you mentioned it originally, if you haven't had the essential selling skills, if you haven't been through the sales process and been shown those techniques and tactics, then that would be my very first thing. That's what happened to me when I went into sales. I was 24. That was the first thing, and it changed my life. So that understanding. Secondly, I'd say having a good sales manager is so important. Your first sales manager has such an impact on you. And if they're good, they will be coaching you, they'll be rehearsing, they'll be giving you options with certain customers. Also, the idea of getting some coaching, I think, is absolutely key. And if all of those can't happen for you, then I would think that, copying the methods of successful salespeople in your organisation is good. So accompanying a good salesperson on a visit, you can learn a lot.
Yeah.
So those would be some very simple things you can do.
Ian, thank you very much. I think that is all we have time today, but thank you for being with us.
Pleasure as always, Adam.